Dimple Thakrar is a best-selling author and trusted coach for high-powered men who want to create greater balance, harmony, and potency in all aspects of their life, personal and professional. Known for her direct, humorous, and no BS approach, Dimple has been featured on the BBC and has helped many men to realize their fuller potentials. Mitra, what were the key takeaways for you in this episode?
My favorite one was normal and healthy. As you know, that's my favorite subject because often people confuse these two and they ask, like, is this normal? I usually say, I don't know. Is it healthy? So that separation and that distinction really worked for me. And also, I just loved her playfulness. It felt like all the playfulness perhaps that she couldn't show up or hold as a child, it's really showing up in a beautiful way in her as an adult. And that I really connected to and loved. What about you?
Yeah, I really loved her playfulness, her young spirit. For me, I really appreciated the conversation we had about the balance between masculine and feminine, the masculine and feminine within each one of us, and how that plays out in our relationships and the importance of that in intimate relationships.
If you're first generation where you live and felt you didn't fit in growing up, or if you're someone who wants to tap into your playful spirit, or if you've discovered something about yourself that you didn't know and you're having trouble accepting it, this episode is for you.
Hi, Dimple.
Hi, Ben. How are you? Hi, Mitra. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Dimple, I just want to hear if I saw you on street and just got interested or fascinated by you, which is very easy looking at your face and feeling your energy, even through technology. And I would say, tell me something about you. What would be the first thing you say about you?
I would say that if you're meeting me on the street, we've connected for a reason. And my goal and mission in life is whoever I meet to make their day a better day, having met me. That, for me, fills me up. So even if that means I just pass you in the street and I smile, that's enough. And that literally is how I live my life.
And if I wanted some informational, not energetic thing, even though that was the best thing. Yeah. I got so much just hearing that. But if I wanted some information about you, what's the first piece of information that you would share with me?
So often people will say, what do you do? I'm curious, Dimple. You fascinate me. They're often drawn to my energy. And so I'll say I'm an executive coach because that's what most people understand in this 3D realm. And they'll say, in what way do you coach? And I'll say, most people come to me because they want to improve their relationships, both intimate and in the business world. And so that's my gift, relationships. And so we'll start with that. I'll often meet people who are successful in every other area in their lives except their relationships. And that can be intimate, that can be older children, it can be ex-wives, it can be parents. And so I'll say that's what I do. I love to help people build the most incredible intimate relationships on this level and on an energetic level. So
may I go on, Ben? Because I just can't let this one go. Thank you. And if you felt safe, Dimple, and you put all the professional hat off and all the other things off, and I would say, tell me something about you that rarely people know about you.
One of the things that I don't share very often is, and it's not because I'm not proud of it or embarrassed about it, it's just I don't let it define me. So me and my husband were diagnosed with ADHD probably about 12 months ago. And at the time, I was asking him to get assessed. And he said to me, if I'm getting assessed, you need to get assessed. And I was like, I'm the coach and I'm perfect. The problem is with you, babe.
Of course.
Of course. Come on. So I was like, yeah, I'll get assessed as well. Why not? I'm curious. I'd love to know more about me. And so I'm always on this search to explore more and more. And so we went along and we got our results And I remember sitting in this office, and the doctor said, and we were both sat there, the doctor said, one of the hardest people I've ever diagnosed. He said, do you know who that is? And I said, I don't, tell us. And he said, it was my daughter, because women are so good at masking. They're so good at masking all the difficulties and challenges that come up. And he said, so when I share this with you, please know that it isn't a reflection on you being a failure. And he said, you also have ADHD. And I just cried. I cried because who am I? I didn't know who I was. I didn't understand who I was because I thought I was the normal one. It was a cry of loss of self and also a relief of self, because I finally understood what was going on with me, and I was able to take the mask off and actually go, fuck it, this is who I am. Even, Mitra, even things like at that point, I'd been dyeing my hair for 20 years, covering the grey. I've been this grey for 20 years, and gave me a freedom to actually not have to hide anymore, to not have to compensate for the things that I found challenging every single day, because I didn't want anybody to know that I didn't know how to do those things, or it didn't make sense in my brain I didn't think like that. Yeah, that's something I've not shared openly with many people. In fact, I've only touched on it on my own podcast, but not in, yeah, it was a real sense of loss because I was 50 years old. So for 50 years, I'd been hiding things that were hard and also hiding gifts. Like the way my brain works is very different to what I noticed other people. So I was trying to fit in the norm, and I just couldn't fit in because I didn't understand why they didn't see what I saw, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Such a relief. I hear that and I feel so much love for you, and I can relate as well, because I've been going through a process myself of just taking ownership and really taking inventory of who I am, and particularly looking at the shadow sides of myself and the parts of myself that I didn't want to admit were there, insecurities in particular. And now that I'm owning them and giving them permission to be, it feels like so much energy has been liberated.
Yes.
A lot of energy that I was using to hide those things, and unconsciously too.
Yes.
I wasn't consciously doing it.
Yeah.
We know, but we don't know, because once we're conscious of it, we're like, oh, I've been doing this the whole time and I knew it. But now I'm aware of it, and to just let go and just take full ownership is such a liberating feeling. So what has evolved for you since then? Owning that and accepting it. How has that changed how you show up in the world, how you show up with your clients?
The first place that it evolved was with my family, with my husband, because I got to be me. I got to be full. It was so liberating. Once I'd got over the grief of releasing the dimple that had the mask, and unconsciously, like you said, Ben, you don't do it on purpose, but you suddenly go, oh, hold on. So that diagnosis, although I don't particularly stand for labels, what it did was unlock a key for me. It gave me permission to be more of me. It gave me permission to stand up for what I wanted. It gave me permission to actually go, you know what? I don't like this part of our relationship. I don't need to tolerate this part of our relationship. And I did that with all my close family. So even my daughters, it gave me the courage to have boundaries. It actually gave me the courage to own and explore what my standards were. It was the most beautiful gift because it gave me permission to go inwards and go, okay, who is Dimple then? What does she really want? How does she want? And what are her standards? And honestly, there was a moment where my husband and I were going to split. Not because we don't love each other, but because I was airing my standards for the first time in a way that wasn't telling him this is what I want, but in a way of owning who I am and what makes me happy.
Yeah.
I had spent my whole life giving to others, and I hadn't actually taken a moment to go, what makes you happy, Dimple? What is it that you like and what is it that you don't want? And then to have the courage to articulate it, because the fear of being rejected was so big. It still is. But I now am aware that's just the way my brain is wired, and it's okay. And I can regulate my nervous system when that happens and speak it. Like my husband and I, our relationship has evolved to an unbelievable level because I can now vulnerably say to him, babe, my nervous system is playing havoc with the way you've just spoken to me. And I know it's not anything you've done. It's just the way my brain is reacting to this. It's like you've rejected me. And I can ask and say to him, please, just hold me. Just stop speaking to me and just hold me because my nervous system is on fire right now. And he gets to do that for me, right? It doesn't make him wrong. Having that information to be able to say, I'm really sensitive to rejection in that tone. And particularly because in my childhood, there was a lot of violence. So I would hide to keep safe. And being quiet and silenced actually meant that I was safe, right? And so that evolution of being able to actually say, whoa, hold on, it's safe for me to express I'm scared, safe for me to ask for masculine support in this so I can be my absolute vulnerable feminine and he gets to be my hero or not in that moment. Both is okay. It was so liberating. And that's just one example of how many things have evolved as a result of finally being understood, finally me understanding me.
What you shared just resonated on such a deep level. Thank you for sharing that with us. And that's okay. What a simple yet powerful statement.
Yeah.
I'm feeling scared, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So simple, but so powerful.
And it's okay for him to not save me also. He gets that discernment, and it doesn't mean he doesn't love me or he's rejected me. It just means that I have compassion for his discernment of choice. And that's okay also, right?
Total liberation. Everybody is liberated and allowed to be themselves.
Yeah.
And then within that being ourselves, then we can choose. And everything is okay within that realm because there's no hiding, there's no playing games and roles. It's actually who you are.
Yeah.
Dimple, I shared in one of our podcasts that I recall the first time I got really frightened in life. And that was when my very close friend then was diagnosed with brain cancer. And he was dying in front of me literally every day. I would come from school. We would spend time. And I remember that was the first time that I got frightened and I got liberated. I want to know if you remember when Dimple, as a child, when was the first time that you felt frightened and started hiding? Do you remember? Was it a particular time or was it just ongoing? Because there is a time that we get it as a child. This is not.
Yeah, I think it was just ongoing, Mitra, because I don't recall a time when it wasn't as a young child. There's no memory of it not being that way until, in fact, there is memory of it not being that way when we moved house. I must have been about 13. All the violence was associated with the first house that. So my parents were immigrants. They were evicted from Africa in 73 and they moved here to take refuge. And at that time, Mum was 7 months pregnant with me. So I felt all her trauma of that eviction because literally overnight there were soldiers with guns saying, leave your house now. So it was a really traumatic time. She had to leave her husband. Dad was trying to sort out, trying to get some kind of assets across. She didn't know when she'd next see her husband. She had a 5-year-old child and 7 months pregnant with me, going to a country that she doesn't speak the language, with her mother-in-law, who was also the perpetrator of her beatings. So it was a very scary time. So I don't actually recall any time, because she was beaten while she was pregnant with me. So I don't recall any time where my nervous system wasn't on red alert as a child. And it's interesting, even as an adult now, I've been practicing yoga for probably on and off, playing with it for 10 years. But actually, I found a teacher recently in the last 4 months. She's a master. She's not just a yoga teacher. And she has witnessed so much trauma in my body and has, in the past 4 months, taught me how to breathe. I'm 51 years old and I didn't know how to breathe.
It's crazy. It's
No, you knew how to
something so
breathe.
simple, but so you forgot. You forgot.
forgot.
You're
No,
remembering.
you were
You're
breathing with
remembering.
fear. You
I
were
was
breathing with
breathing
fear, but you were breathing not in safety and love.
And I did a private session with her, the first class she ever did with me. And all she asked me to do in the first class, we did Kapalabhati breathing, breathwork, and she taught me, she just put her hands on my rib cage and she said, push my hands out. And I was like, this is a weird sensation that you use your lungs to expand to get the breath in, not your belly. No, it was like okay, now what I want you to do is hug yourself. And I hugged myself. And she said, okay, we're going to practice the breath while you hug yourself. And I kid you not, I cried for an hour. That's all I did, the whole class. She said, that's how you feel safe in yourself. And we spend a lifetime, and I'm so blessed to be experiencing this now, this release. And for several classes afterwards, even in child's pose. And I just bawled my heart out, and all the memories came back of how many times I hid under the bed in child's pose.
Wow. There's so many questions that come up for me. We could go on for a long time. But my question is, what did little Dimple, what ways did she find in order to be playful, imaginative, or safe for that matter, beside hiding?
I would love to be the entertainer. So, like I did Indian classical dancing, even when we were at parties, I'd be the one in on the dance floor making everybody laugh. And that was my gift. Even when we'd go shopping, if I remember Mum saying wherever she took me in the pushchair, I'd be saying hello to everybody. That would be my hi. And again, it's interesting, Mitra, that you asked me this, because you asked me a question before about when people first meet me. And I just want them to feel that joy. I just want them to be happy, right? And so that's interesting. So from being a child, I've always greeted people with a smile, and it's come through. I did an experiment in London. London is known for people not having eye contact. Like you can go on the tube. It's a bit like New York, that resting bitch face thing that goes on, right? Both my sisters at some point, one of them still does, lives in London, and they were like, please don't speak to anybody on the tube. They'll think you're a weirdo. Don't have eye contact. Please don't
Challenge accepted. Or the opposite of that. The opposite is the challenge.
Exactly, right?
Because that's what you do, right? You just take the opposite.
Exactly.
That's the challenge.
They really think you're weird. So anyway, I was speaking at a conference in London. So I was staying at a hotel, and I'd stayed overnight, and then I was getting from the hotel to the place I was speaking. I thought to myself, got a little suitcase. I am going to smile at every single person I see. I'm just going to look them in the eye and smile. City centre London. I'm just going to do an experiment, see what happens. I kid you not, the number of people that said, you've really made my day. Thank you. Or I had people help me with my bag up and down the stairs in the tube. My sisters are like, they're going to run off with your bag. I'm like, no, they're just kind There was a homeless guy, I smiled at him, and he was like, nobody even looks at me. You took the time to look down and smile. It was a whole different day. The whole day turned out completely beautiful. The gifts.
When did Dimple become aware of that as a gift? Your magnetism, your charisma was a way, I imagine, as a child to get attention, to get that affirmation and validation. And now there seems to be a paradigm shift where, no, this is my gift. This is my gift to others. My magnetism, my charisma is a way that I can uplift others. When did that shift happen for you?
I don't think it ever has been. I'm processing. Until you've asked me, is it a gift? I didn't see it as a gift, which is interesting, right? I do it for me more than anything else because I want people to feel joy. And if I smile, I feel joy. And then they get to feel what I'm feeling.
So you've always had that in you, that desire, even as a child, the desire to smile at someone, to uplift them. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because I experience you as someone who's just radiates so much joy and love out to the world. And it's hard to imagine a Dimple who was scared and hiding under the bed. I can relate to that, by the way.
Right.
I can really relate to that because throughout my childhood and most of my adult life, even now, nervous system being on edge, not feeling safe for as long as I can remember.
Wow.
I can relate to that, and it's very surprising for me to hear that from you. So you've discovered the breathing as a way to regulate the nervous system, and I imagine you becoming safe in this world and this body has been a continual progression over the last however many years. Was there a tipping point moment for you, or has it just been really gradual? Your progression into feeling safe in this body, in this world.
It started, Ben. It's a brilliant question. It started when I think about it. My spiritual awakening was in 2017 when I had that huge intervention with Tony Robbins. That was like a wake up moment because he could see the love in me that I wasn't even aware of. He could see that love in me. And so that was a huge wake up moment. And from then I was on this journey of self-discovery, self-awareness, constant realizing that actually I've always been of service to others. Every single job I've done has been of service to others. And in doing so, that's been of service to me. So it's been like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But I hadn't linked it until recently to it being a method for me to push down the fear and push down the scaredness. You talked, Ben, about really embracing your shadow side, and we all have a shadow side. So the Dimple that you see in the street is the Dimple that works on herself every day to bring the joy for herself first. I used to do it for everybody else, for the acknowledgement, to validate me. And that was probably the reason I had anorexia. And I really was my worst critic. Like the noise, the talk in my head was constant. I'm not enough, so I need to make sure everybody else is happy. That way they won't reject me. It wasn't a healthy way of keeping me well because it relied on others.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned when I was little was that if I learned very quickly to get out of body. It was very easy for me to come out of body. In fact, it was bliss being out of body. But what it meant was I disassociated with this body. So I spent a lifetime of hating it and a lifetime of not seeing this face and the beauty within and outside. So all the external validation was a double-edged sword. It was, yes, I am beautiful, but I don't feel it inside. So please don't tell me. So it took a long time to receive the compliments and actually go, thank you. And that is a work in progress. Because that's what I want people to know, right? They see a finished product or they think it's a finished product, and it's not. Every day I work with my shadow. Every day I nervous system regulate. Every day I make myself go out and go, joy. I even had a tattoo put on, I am love. That's just recently to remind me
Beautiful.
who I am.
It's the truth.
Dimple,
Right.
sounds like you're doing a lot of work inner and outer. My question is, what is the next mask you need to remove?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Oh, and it's giving me tingles. The work in progress with the next mask, and I'm actually really owning this, really only recently, is loving this body. Is loving this body. It's been an internal battle, and this body is now going through the next chapter of the menopause, and it's a completely different shape to what it was. And it's just really accepting and loving that this beautiful body, this vessel that has carried you through so much and created life so many times. It's time to love her and not fight her. It's time to accept she is beautiful. And that, for me, is the work in progress. So it's still a little uncomfortable when people compliment me, and that is the work in progress.
Dimple, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Your heritage is Indian.
Yes.
I have a fascination with, I have a deep love for the Indian heritage. I'm deep into the yogic path. I love the teachings, all the spiritual practices, the kirtans, the way, the prayers. How has your Indian heritage, if at all, how has it influenced you and who you are today? And what's your connection with that?
You guys are amazing at questions because you're really making me think deep, which I fully appreciate. Gosh. So growing up, Ben, I didn't want to be Indian. I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to smell different. I didn't want to have different food. I didn't appreciate any of it. I hated it. And then when all my friends were doing ballet, I was doing classical Indian dancing. I didn't really value the depth and the spiritual connection until I had my own awakening. I didn't understand the wisdom, and I'm learning it now as an infant through yoga, and actually really honoring my heritage, really honoring it. And I disowned it for a long time because there was a lot of things that were the norm in the heritage. It was normal to beat your wife. It was normal to suppress women. It was normal for women to be silenced.
The dark
And
side.
the dark side, right?
Yeah.
And I associated that with being Indian. I didn't want any of that. And I was fiercely independent. And my dad raised 3 girls, fiercely independent, so that they would never have to go through what mum did.
I grew up Iranian Jewish, and for a while I didn't really want to associate with my Iranian heritage for various reasons. But similar to you, every culture has their dark side, and I was associating it with the dark side of the culture. But so much beauty and wisdom, and also with my Jewish heritage and the rituals and customs and whatnot. I've just found so much appreciation for it. Is there a particular aspect right now that you're resonating with from your Hindu or Indian
Yeah, there's a lot,
heritage?
and it's so interesting, the culture and the traditions. And we used to have ceremonies as children that our parents would make us sit through, and chanting and the songs and everything and the mantras and all that. And now I look back and I feel so privileged because, for example, I go to this yoga studio, she puts the song on, and I know the mantra, I know the chant because that's like my heritage, that's my childhood, right? And it's wild because it brings me now such comfort. There's a chant with Hanuman, and it's one of our favorite.
Hanuman, I recently learned about that chant. Go on.
It brings such joy to me because it brings me back home. Being displaced, not knowing where home is, even though I was born here, but different, it's meant that I've been able to really embrace that because there's comfort in it and also wisdom. And I think those are the 2 things for me. Some of the rituals, like with the fire and the burning of different seeds and oils, and I now do that not because of my childhood, but more because it feels innate in me as a spiritual practice of cleansing, as a spiritual practice of gratitude. While I don't necessarily, I am Hindu, I identify as Hindu, I don't follow the traditional Hindu practices. I follow more of a spiritual practice that seems to be aligned with Hindu practices. So it's a bit of a crossroads. And again, it's doing it my way. It's learning that I do it my way and it's okay. Just that whole piece again.
Yeah. It really speaks to just how much can be overlooked in terms of the value and spiritual nourishment that we can get in our lives from our cultures that we were raised in. We just have to get past certain aspects of our heritage and culture may have traumatized us or we just didn't like them.
Yeah.
But once we do, this was my experience, is that I found that, oh my God, I don't need someone to tell me that I should do certain rituals and traditions that Jews do. I want to do it
Yes.
because it's meaningful to me. It inspires me. I resonate with it. But it seems like you almost have to move away from it and get away from the shoulding and all of that, and then come back to it out of a free will,
Yes.
out of a genuine desire
Yes.
that, you know what, I resonate with this and I love this and I'm going to do this because of that.
Right.
Not because someone else told me to do it or it's just because it's a cultural thing.
I'm just contemplating as you are both talking about your backgrounds, because I also come from a different background, and everywhere I lived on 4 continents, I was an outsider. But I suppose because I was older when I left my country, it was a little bit different for me. I already had discernment and I didn't need to hate it or love it, protect it or put it down.
Yeah.
It wasn't there for me. It was very fascinating. I suppose when you're younger, it's a reaction. It's like part of puberty saying, I decide what I want to do with my background. You don't tell me.
Yeah.
But first of all, my family was not traditional. And secondly, I think I was much older than both of you when I left Iran, and it felt very different for me. So that's fascinating as I listen to you, both of you talk about that. This word normal kept coming up a few times, and I really love to, and I do it in my classes. So I just want to take this opportunity to unfold normal, because I distinguish between normal and healthy. Normal to me is what most people do, healthy is what's healthy. And seems like or sounds like people use these two words interchangeably as if normal is the healthy. Now that you know you are not normal. And I felt that there was a lot of reaction, or you called it shock actually, when you found out that you have ADHD. How normal do you feel now after a year of living with it, accepting it, and even welcoming it?
I'm laughing because I don't want to be normal.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect answer.
I've known, and that has been the battle the whole time. I've known that I'm not normal. What the hell is normal, anyways? Who is?
Yes.
And it's helped me love my crazy. It's helped me really embrace my crazy. There's times when I want to go out and just dance just because. My husband and I went for a meal one day, and it was like a beautiful hotel in London. We were at the Savoy having lunch, and one of my favourite songs came on. And I just said, let's just dance. Nobody else was dancing. And we just got up and danced. I like that crazy sometimes, that spontaneity, that it's how I've lived my life.
The truth is that everybody else loves it too.
Really?
When people own their crazy, even if they say they don't like it, they deep down they love it and they envy that you're just owning who you are. Because we all wish to do that. And the truth is we're all crazy in our own ways.
Right?
The truth is that's not crazy. That is
It's
just
exactly.
being you. That's the truth.
Right?
That's just being really authentic you. What is wrong with getting up and dancing to a beautiful music? Who says that the restaurant needs to determine whether or not you should dance?
Right? It's like playfulness. It's like being childlike. This is another story on the tube in London when I was with my family. And at the time, the girls were younger. Kira must have been about 7, 8. Maya must have been about then 10, 12, something like that. And we had a packed lunch on the tube. And it's lunchtime, so it's not a packed tube. We're in between visiting different museums and things. We're doing sightseeing. And I'm like, handing out the grapes and like to all the strangers on the tube, like sharing my food. And my husband's like, there she goes again. And the girls are like, Kira's doing pole dancing on the poles. And we're having a blast, and everybody on the tube is going. It wasn't normal for London, but we had a blast. Everybody had a blast. So what? Who cares, right?
Normal is the worst thing that happened to human, I think.
Oh my God.
Everybody. It really comes from the fear-based question of, do I fit in? That's what normal is. Normal is a fancy name for you are forced to be like what the institutions are dictating to you to be.
Yeah.
That's what normal is.
Conforming. And this swings back to one of your other questions, was which mask am I working on releasing? And this is when I was in a period where I would drink a lot and we'd go out social. So I'd drink a lot socially. I wouldn't drink in the house, but if we were out, I would drink, and I would be free as a bird. And the girls would be like, Mum, it's not necessary for you to dance on the tables every time we go out. And when I look back, I think that word for me was me allowing me to be me. And I don't always want to do that. When I do, and when I don't, sometimes it's just the freedom and liberation of the play. It's the play. It's the piece on play. I don't think we play enough as adults.
We don't.
Yeah. Just a toy wrestle and,
Yeah, I think it's forgotten, this experience of fun and playfulness.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean because people associate it with silliness, but then silly has a bad name. That's how playfulness got discounted. Anything that is good for our soul got discounted by getting a label that everybody has aversion to. It's like, oh God, I don't want to be silly. I want to be the smart one. I want to be the intelligent one. But anyways, I have another question for you. May I? Let's go now that we're going deeper and you're so playful and open. Are you wearing a mask right now?
Yes and no. There's
Tell me the yes and the no.
Yeah, so when all the tech came off and it was all going haywire, and then the printer started making noise, so I'm screaming at my family, going, "Can you please, Kira? You should have kept it plugged in, and now it's not working. And who's got the printer going?" And all that crazy, but like in a frustrated, crazy way, was happening because this matters to me. And I wanted this to be the word that's coming is perfect. But actually, I'd lived my life by being perfectly imperfect. And I knew that you guys would understand that the whole tech thing is just exactly how it's meant to be, right? And if you don't, then you're not my people. And so this whole piece on yes and no is that, yes, the mask is there because of my desire to have this mean something to people, to have this land for people. And so the annoyance and the frustration that happens is also who I am, is also the truth of the human in me, that I've allocated this time and it wasn't quite working to plan. So yeah, I did feel frustrated.
Yeah. I asked that question because I noticed that I was wearing a mask myself. Yeah, I noticed that I immediately went into the teacher mask. I'm here to teach. And I got shivers, so that must be true. And when I noticed my mask, it's interesting. I asked about your mask instead of first talking about my mask. It was very interesting talking about projection. So it was just fascinating to me. And I want to know if Ben is wearing a mask right now.
Always, always. There's always something.
Yeah.
I'm human after all. Yeah, I want to just say before I get into that, it's incredible how we're mirrors for each other, always, without fail. We're always a mirror. Anything we notice about someone else, it's some way we're perceiving ourselves as. Earlier, I made the comment to you, Dimple, about earlier in childhood, were you doing those behaviors to seek validation? And the truth is, that was me. That was me, and it's still me. That's one of the biggest things. And so, speaking to the mask that I'm wearing, one of the ones that is just such a strong habit for me, so much of my identity has been tied to it, has been the desire to get the validation, seek the validation of other people. It's so deeply ingrained, and I'm grateful. I'm so much more aware of it. And before, it was really interesting coming back to giving ourselves permission to just be as we are. Before, my challenge was that I was guilting myself for having that desire, right? So there's this perpetual tension inside of me where there's this part of Ben that he wants to be liked, he wants the validation of other people. And then there was this other side of Ben that was like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's neediness. That's not good. It's the other side of the same coin, right? You don't want to look needy. People are going to see that you're needy. Don't do that. So there's been this constant tension, whereas now, very recently, it's been like, okay, yeah, some part of me like really just craves the attention and validation of other people. And rather than pushing it away, I'm actually curious to get to know this part of me more. And I'm curious to understand, what is it that Ben is actually getting out of the validation? And is the thing that he thinks he's getting, is he actually getting that? What does he really need? What does he really want? And it's been beautiful. Again, even though that tendency to seek validation is generally not perceived as a positive thing, interestingly, as I've given myself permission to just feel that, I've felt more comfortable in my interactions with people. And ironically, there's the desire for validation is decreasing on its own organically. There is no pushing it away. Yeah.
When you're talking about validation, when I have experienced exactly that. What I did was I looked inwards for me. I was like, okay, so you talked about us being mirrors and projections. If I'm seeking validation outside of me, where am I feeling that I'm not validating myself? So for me, I looked inwards and I was like, okay, I'm seeking something outside of me that clearly I'm not giving myself. There's a lack in me. So what is the speak I'm doing every day in me that's devalidating me? So that I need to then fill that gap. When I asked myself that question, what I realized was that the speak inside of me was really not kind. And once I became aware of that, then the external validation was like a bonus for me. It was lovely. It was like coming from a place of abundance rather than a place of scarcity and lack within me. Yeah, you can validate me. I'm good. I'm really good. I don't need your validation. And I welcome it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. It helped me out.
You help people in their relationships. It's a core part of your work. You work with high-powered individuals, and you do what you call executive coaching. And it seems like a big part of it is relationships.
Yes.
And I'm curious, you wrote a book, The Roadmap to Purpose, and it's targeted at men and men stepping into their masculinity and owning their life's purpose. I'm curious, as it pertains to relationships and what you know about men and the masculine, over the last 2 years or 3 years since you published the book, what are new perspectives and paradigms that you have learned? If you were to go back and add anything to the book or change anything in the book, what would you change?
Needing language in order for the magnetism, the attraction that you desire to just be provided in the most beautiful way and in the most nourishing way for the masculine and the feminine. So both within me, I can now, and I've learned how to use energetics in my feminine to create power so that my masculine drives action. So that's within me without me having to use words. So it's purely an energy thing. So there's no strategy or script for say this to yourself and this will happen. It's very much an energetic thing. And in the same respect, being able to teach it within you, also being able to then teach it in a, and not just it's not just teaching, it's role modeling it in a relationship. So I can request things from my beloved without actually speaking it. And he can feel that he wants to provide that without me asking. And that's the evolution. That's the piece that has come through me owning who I am and owning my gifts and owning my ability to, the word manipulate is coming, but not in a negative way, but move the energy.
Move the energy. I love that. Yeah.
Right?
It's another way of creating and guiding. We're so used to using our minds and doing. There's other ways.
Yes.
There's more subtle ways.
Yeah.
Correct. It's the being.
And Dimple, I hear a lot of masculine, feminine talk from you. They're in different bodies. I want to know the masculine within you. Tell us about that.
Yes. So when I spoke then, it was about the masculine and feminine within me. So when I get the balance correct within me, depending on the contents of where I am, I have an incredible masculine. She's driven. She knows when to take aligned action. She's not fearful of it at all. And it's fueled by my powerful feminine. And that's how I work it. The source comes from the feminine for me. That's the heart center every time. It comes from the feminine. And then I move in the masculine. And that's the dance that happens for me. And sometimes the feminine is all about actually not doing. Often it's that. Often it's guiding the masculine within me to hold back, to trust the power of the feminine. The word patience comes through then. She guides me to be patient, the masculine to be patient and lean back.
Wow. That is very powerful statement. At that time, you have access to both masculine and the feminine energies, and somehow they are in collaboration with each other.
Mm-hmm.
When you are in that state, how does that affect your relationship with your life partner? You called him soulmate as well.
It's the difference between us being married and not. So when I wasn't aware of my masculine and feminine and the imbalance, that was when we were heading for divorce, because I was operating in my inauthentic, too much masculine and not even hearing my feminine. And it basically depolarized him. It made him flip, so that he was operating in his inauthentic, too much feminine and not enough masculine for him. It was awful. And even now, when I'm out of balance or he's out of balance, it throws us. If I'm operating too much in my masculine and he's in his masculine, we fight. There's no attraction, there's no polarity. If I'm in my feminine and he's in too much in his feminine, again, nothing gets done. It's literally the difference between us being married and not. It's a daily thing that I'm conscious of, because when we're not in balance, that's when we have conflict. So then I'm like, hold on, where am I not being true to myself right now? Where am I not operating in my power? So then I'll go back to my feminine and I'll go, what is the power? What is the message that's needed here? And is it that my masculine is pushing too much? And is it that actually she needs to? And often it's that she needs to be patient.
Fascinating.
It's a huge question. There's so much, and I wrote so much about it in the book. The minute we flipped that switch, and that's what happened in that event with the intervention with Tony Robbins, he helped me flip the switch. He helped me identify the truth of who I am, which is love. And that's the truth of who my beloved was attracted to, because he's love also. We all are. We just don't see it until we get shown it.
Until we remove the blocks to it.
Yeah. Yes,
Because
exactly.
it's there. It's always there.
It's always there.
Dimple, this has been lovely. Such a joy to have you here with us. You're just an emanation of love, an embodiment of it. So raw. Thank you for getting naked with us, really. Your courage and for sharing your gifts with us and all your wisdom.
Yeah, and playing with us.
I love you both deeply. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And thank you for allowing me to play and just have fun, right? And get naked and be truthful. Because really, it's the truth. It's the truth, right? Tony Robbins says the truth will set you free. And what fun. How much more love, how much more fun would we all experience in that truth? So thank you for bringing that out.
Thank you.
I appreciate you both.
Amen. Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.